Hello everyone! Hello and welcome back to Lotus Path Holistics. Today we are going live. Yes, we're going live. We are going live. We are live. So welcome back to Lotus Path Holistics. This is Let's Be Honest with Leo and Luna.
Hi everybody! Happy Friday and happy Saturday to the rest of the world.
Yes, happy Friday. We love doing Fridays with you guys. Lots of fun, lots of great talks and conversations. So yes, this is Let's Be Honest. This is a spiritual podcast where we talk about spiritual issues and the connection to all things spiritual, metaphysical, mental. It's all kinds of fun. And we're happy to be with you guys. We've been trying to fix this Facebook Live thing, and I think it works this week. So, I think everything is good. So yes, looking forward to talking to you guys. So today we're going to be talking about our last inner gift. There's 3 inner gifts, and we're going to talk about the last one, which is about intelligence. And today we're going to discuss with you about intelligence, what that means to a spiritual person, what that means in general, and how to actually use that and develop that into actual proper skills. So for all of you joining, hello to you. And happy Friday and Saturday to the rest of the world, like you said, because it's so strange like that. Here we are. So, a recap on intelligence, just basically inner gifts. So, inner gifts are the gifts from within. Inner gifts are about the thoughts and intentions of the world. Also about your natural abilities that you develop over time and your inner circumstances. So, this week we're talking about intelligence. Intelligence is about mental consciousness. And intelligence is about actually the mind and you connecting to the minds of others and the universal mind itself. And it has to deal with a lot of interesting things that, you wouldn't think about when it comes to intelligence, because it seems like such a mental thing. But it's a very spiritual thing too, because you take intellect in your brain and then you set it on spiritual fire. So we're going to explain all about what that means. So definitely intellect, intelligence, intellect. As I've gathered, there's an inner mental nature to all of us. And it's about the sense of expression, how we express ourselves to others and ourselves. It's about the discernment of the truth and understanding what is false and what is real. And it's also about things that you're loyal to, things that you connect to very easily, and also things that you focus on, maybe even devotions. So these are all things that have to deal with intelligence, spiritual intelligence, as well as mental spiritual intelligence.
Well, I don't know, I had just so many thoughts. Like, I was watching your video and then I had my own thoughts about intelligence. I feel that many people, I guess, get intrigued about it. Like, so I'm not intelligent, or what is happening there? Hi, Colleen! Or so, what does it mean to be spiritually intelligent? So I feel like it's not just the truth itself. It is about the level of, I would just say, understanding.
Yeah.
And especially, when people start their spiritual path, there is a lot of truth, to be understood. Because in order to understand the new truths that come your way, or the things that you really want to know, it is about leaving behind all truths and things that you already know. And it is when the ego starts fighting, right? Ego is like, not in a bad way. Okay, so ego is about the things that we have learned, and they have created that, I would just say, barrier between our truth and the world.
That's true, yeah.
And so when we start our spiritual path, it is when these learned beliefs, our ego starts clashing with the new things that we start to understand about the world, and then we're like, so where do we really stand?
That's true. And we didn't introduce ourselves because we forgot. We're so focused on the topic.
I'm so excited, right?
I know. Because we want to be able to talk about truth, because it's such an important topic, I think, in spirituality. Because it's something people don't really recognize. But yeah, so I'm Leo, past life therapist, spiritual practitioner, just basically doing all things energy and past. So, yeah.
And I'm Luna. I'm a karmic resolution facilitator. So I do work with limiting beliefs, ego that we're going to talk about right now, learn patterns across lifetimes to this lifetime.
Yes, so feel free, guys, to ask any questions along the way, any topics that interest you, or suggestions, or even experiences you have. We'll be happy to discuss them. So intelligence, to me, intelligence is very much, it's a topic about how smart you are. But also, as I've understood in past lives and this life, I've understood that intelligence actually, resonates. Hey, Roxana!
Oh, hi, Roxana!
So it actually resonates with a skill. It's a part of us that actually inhibits our mind so that we can actually develop skills spiritually. Because it's about spiritual gifts. So intelligence itself is a spiritual gift and we don't even know it. Intelligence is deeper than just connecting to how much we know. Because, the power of intellect, right? It's the ability to communicate with the spiritual and the physical world. To be able to communicate with your friends, your family. Hey, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
For us to even communicate with you, we use our intelligence to do so. But what about my spiritual intelligence? How do I communicate with you in a spiritual way? That's the idea of spiritual intelligence. You're like, what do I do with that? How does my mental consciousness actually communicate my spirituality, my spiritual gifts? That is what the spiritual aspect of intelligence, that's what I mean. Because it's about the mental consciousness. All the minds all together, universal mind. And, to further explain, intelligence leads towards advanced gifts, like all spiritual gifts. And intelligence leads to things like channeling, and channeling knowledge, and very commonly mediumship. You have to be able to not only be able to bring energy down into you, but you have to be able to discern the truth. And intelligence shows you what's real and what's fake. Otherwise, you'll be channeling all kinds of spirits who don't really mean well. And I really want to talk about this today.
I've seen that.
Because I am a spiritual medium, and okay. You want some confessions? Let's be honest. So you want to know who taught me how to be a spiritual medium? This one. She doesn't do it as much as I do today because I found a way to do it in sort of like a I don't get too involved way. But when I met Luna, she was...
I was a nightmare.
She was a nightmare. She was a pure channeler. So when I met her 12, 13 years ago, she was able to channel guides and spirits and other worldly races, channel your higher self, channel anything, channel your chakras. She was channeling everything. She was channeling the walls, okay?
No filter.
No filter. Because she was just exploring her spirituality. And I was like, no. Because, together we had found out that you can't trust everything you channel. And we found that out through a lot of mistakes we made. And I didn't want to believe it. But the truth is, just like we have a corrupt world here with a lot of good and a lot of bad, in higher worlds and higher dimensions, the same thing.
And worse, actually.
Actually worse. Everything here we have in this world, it's worse up there. And the war goes on in multiple dimensions and multiple worlds. Genocide is not a new issue. War is not a new issue. These are all things that have happened before. And I remember my past lives looking at the concepts of war and, dissemination and anti-Semitic hate, and to find out that actually exists on other planets and other past lives was so depressing. But then again, it gave a foundation to understanding that our world has roots. And all the chaos that we go through, it's all condensed, but it doesn't come from nowhere. But it's part of what I talk about as intelligence. You have to be able to be on the mental wavelength to understand the world. And I feel like intelligence is truly about understanding and being aware of things. It's a pure awareness that you got to be aware of what's around you, the darkness, the light. People who are intelligent, people who are smart, but also people who are, not so smart or just ignorant of the truth. You have to be aware of these things with spirituality. So for me, back to the concept, one of the more common advanced skills of being intelligent and connecting to the mental consciousness is mediumship. Basically channeling spirits within you, channeling spirit. And I do this through energy and through empathy. And I do it without having to get my fingers wet, and I found a way around it. But it works. But sometimes it just overcomes me, right? But the biggest skill that I had to learn is to be able to tell the difference between a truth and a lie. Because if you don't, you could end up channeling something that's incorrect and also hurt somebody in the process. It's kind of like a doctor. You have to read the book before you do a surgery. If you don't, you could just be slicing the wrong thing and you could really hurt somebody. And I see my profession as the same because, when I do my energy work and I give my consultations and I do my spiritual healing, I see myself as a spiritual doctor. Like, I'm telling you what's wrong with you. But it's my responsibility to make sure that you don't get hurt because I have to be smart and I have to make sure that I don't touch anything that needs to not be touched so that you're safe. So these are parts of intelligence that need to be happening in spiritual people's lives because it can hurt you. And we've been through those experiences where we're like, oh, we can go anywhere. We can go to any dimension. We can see any past life. And then when you get hurt, you're like, ugh. You realize that the world isn't all love and light. And it's scary. But those mistakes bring you true intelligence. So...
Yeah, so there's I have so many things in my head. I'm just like,
where do we even go?
Where do we even go, right? We'll have so much happening the last almost 12, 13 years that we've known each other because I had my own experience, then Leo had his own, and then when we met, we started sharing our knowledge, right? And in the beginning of my spiritual path, it started since my childhood, right? And so I was channeling quite a lot of stuff. And I was being silenced because I guess I was saying way too much. But then throughout my 20s, I started actually writing on diaries. And I was writing stuff that made no sense. I didn't even have zero filter. So I said automatic writing, automatic drawing. By the way, part of the automatic drawing is my light codes that I create today.
That's true. That's a good point. Automatic drawing and writing is an advanced skill of your mental consciousness, your intelligence.
Right.
Good point.
But the thing is that I actually went to places that I shouldn't be. Because when you have no filter into what you write or what you channel or what knowledge you try to bring down from the universe, well, I guess I should say it, right? I was just looking through my notes. Actually, we're doing spring cleaning. I wrote a post some days ago, right? So we're just doing with Leo some spring cleaning. And I really found some writings from 5 years ago. When we're still in Greece, right? And so, what did I find, Leo? What did I channel? The pandemic. Remember when I found that paper?
Oh yeah, that's true.
And so I wrote about a weird virus, and I wrote all the details. And it was just left on paper. And then I showed it to Leo that time. I'm like, Leo, he's like, what are you talking about, Luna? I'm like, I don't know. I channeled it. He's like, stop channeling, Luna. That's it. I'm like, okay, I guess maybe I should stop doing it. I know, right? And then we were just going, through the notes. And I'm like, Leo, look what I found. He's like, what did you find? And I showed him the paper. And we'd just sit down and we'd read the whole thing. And I literally just described the pandemic. So kind of it shocked me a little bit because at that time I had no filter. So I'm like, I don't know where this thing came from. And so it can be a little bit of scary. And from that point on, I just realized that I need to have a filter. And before I do energy work or I go anywhere, in the spirit realm, I need to have boundaries. And so that is one. And number two that I wanted to mention is that when it comes to spiritual intelligence, it is the ability and capability of a spiritual teacher to simplify a bigger truth or to bring universal truths to people who just start their journey without overcomplicating things. I have met quite a lot of teachers who have, this weird terminology where people really need, to read books and books, to understand what are they really talking about. And so spirituality really, it should be simple, literally simple truths being understood by anyone and resonating. Because sometimes, when words are being used that, how would I say that they're very complicated or, the meaning is not really there. It is not, words that we're using on a daily basis. First of all, it can be scary. Second of all, it turns into, what is it, a cult? Kind of in a sense where, you have to be very mystical.
Where no one
and
can
very,
think for themselves.
Yeah.
Let's keep it real.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So you have to follow the specific mindset. And so from my path, I understood that where I resonate the most when it comes to spiritual teachers is those who speak in simple words and where I can actually think for myself. And that's very, very important. I think when it comes to spiritual intelligence, it is not to teach people a truth and just say, this is what it is, you just take it, and that's the truth and I know the truth. Spiritual intelligence is actually to bring knowledge to people, but actually have them think for themselves. So kind of like, create the environment where people will start asking questions. So how does that affect my life? Why this? Or how? Or, and from that truth, you discover your own truth.
Yeah, that's very much true. Because we're going to talk a lot about how to tell the difference between a truth and a lie.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like where it all ends up. But you have a good point where it's also about knowing what you should and shouldn't do, and when you should stop. And when you should stop digging into something that could hurt somebody or yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to put into intelligence. We'll definitely get into that in future lives. But it's true. It's all about understanding discipline, really. Because the mind can go crazy, but you can't just do everything. It's not safe. So there are a few things to talk about, and it's about talking about the advanced abilities and how you develop them, but also talking about how to tell the difference between truth and lies. So let's talk about truth and lies. In past lives, very much, being able to know the difference between a truth and a lie wasn't so hard. Because you can sort of feel it. Like, it's not today where you have to look at body language in every language and try to figure out, like, you can sort of feel that it's in the air. Like, like when people are very intuitive, you could feel in the air when there's a lie. That's kind of like how past lives were. You just know.
Yep.
And in this life, it's very different because the spiritual world and the physical world are separated. And they're not completely connected in the middle. So therefore, it's really hard to know the difference between something that is real and something that is fake. And that's something that we all struggle with, and I've struggled with too. So I want to discuss that because being able to discern the truth and a lie is a big deal. So my tips that I explained in my video is basically some logical steps on how to tell the difference between a truth and a lie, something that a lot of people can understand, because that's kind of like the way that I try to teach is the most simplest way, even though everything is very complex. But if I can make it simpler, I keep on editing, So number one is about listening to all your senses. So if I'm talking to Luna, I need to listen to more than just her words. I need to listen to her body language, her eyes, her spirit. I need to listen to the things she says, her actions. I need to listen to the environment, her hands. I need to listen to her history and what I know about her. Like, there's so many things to listen to that can tell you the truth about somebody and what they're telling you. But number one is always about listening more into your spiritual senses. So to awaken my senses, when I'm having a conversation with her or a higher being, right, I need to listen to my senses and not to... Because that's a hard one, because I know that we get drawn in, and we lose ourselves in listening to senses, but the first step to knowing if somebody's telling you the truth is to let the information come in. Let the senses come in. Take information. Write down the account. It's an investigation. It's like a mental investigation, basically. So the first step is not trying to figure out the truth. The first step is listening. And that's the problem with a lot of miscommunication, which is people don't know how to, listen. And that's usually the problem in relationships, too. If you're a bad listener, you're bad at relationships. But it's the same, because if you want to have a conversation with someone, you got to listen. You got to figure out how to listen in multiple ways. The second step is about empathizing with that information. So when you listen, you gather information, you have to start to open up your mind and your heart to the information and start to pick apart with your intuition what's true and what's not true. Whatever seems true is usually probably true, and whatever seems too complicated is usually false. And you start to piece it together in your mind. You start to feel what feels right. Empathize with the information that you get from somebody. And then the last step is about discovering the truth by actually making choices and putting yourself in somebody's shoes and trying to go with the most logical sense. So when you meet like a judge or an older person who can tell somebody's lying, it's because they have experience. And usually liars follow the same patterns. And they'll try to deter the conversation, they'll deflect. Liars will want to hide their senses. They won't look at you straight. They will go like this and cross their arms. There's a lot of things that you can tell from a liar. So you can tell a liar or a lie from experience, but also there's spiritual senses that you want to use along that way, because you don't want to only use experience because you can mess that up. You want to use your intuition. So those are some basic logical steps to be able to tell the difference between a lie and the truth, to be able to tell what's real. And we're going to further talk about how to think about that in higher realms and how to talk to higher guides and stuff like that, and to know which one's there for you and which one's not there for you, because it's pretty simple. We'll try to simplify it for you. And
hey, Rachel!
Hey, Rachel!
So, a thing that I would like to mention is people who were raised in a family with pathological liars. And I'm just going to raise my hand because both of my step-parents, especially my stepmother, she was a pathological liar. Mm-hmm. And when you're being raised by someone who tells you that white is black and black is white, you come to a point where you cannot really tell the truth anymore. And so if you're being raised in such an environment, it can be really confusing. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you though, for me, even though logically I was kind of like agreeing with what she was saying, because I was like, okay, well, she's my mom after all, right? So she has to be right to a point. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, well, when, it is your family, you really want to believe them.
Yeah.
But the things that I noticed is that my body actually knew the truth. And so, anxiety, stress, insomnia, weird body sensation. I felt like itching, but not really. So my body was calling that something is wrong. Like my stomach was feeling like in knots, and my throat was hurting also, because the throat chakra is about, communication and the truth. And my body was complaining, and I just thought that, well, I don't know what it is. So I thought that this is something completely internal that is not related to her. Mm-hmm. But when I distanced myself from her after many, many years, and I started looking back, when I lived by myself, I stopped feeling like that. And I started questioning, I'm like, what is really going on? And I realized that my body always knew the truth. It knew the truth. It's just, I was trying not to pay attention because I was trying to keep the peace. And so one way or another, your body will show you the way when it comes to intelligence. Even if your mind is confused, or if you're baffled, or you cannot really tell which is which, there are always going to be signs where, parts of yourselves will show you that something is wrong and something is not really working.
That's true. I have the same thing. And the reason that this is happening, why your body reacts to things that you don't want to react to, is because we live in a world that is weirdly disconnected from the physical realm. Out of the 4 pillars of reality, right? You have your physical, your spiritual, mental, and emotional. And the physical pillar is the one that's always messed up, because that's the world we live in. We have one leg that we step on that is broken. And there's always a question to why, which we'll get to in the future. It's complicated. But as our entire being accesses our body, like our physical body, there's so many things that come through that we almost have to become numb to it to accept things in life. It is so much pain happening in this world, and if you ignore any of that, you end up blocking out the truth, which we're going to talk about, the fact that intelligence is paired off with its curse, which is ignorance.
Yeah.
If you ignore things, you ignore the truth. The more you numb yourself, the more you don't know anything. And so it's a problem you have to feel, you have to sense, to be able to fully be conscious of what the truth really is. And to me, I have the same thing. I've noticed myself in relationships and in life that my body reacts to the truth whether I like it or not. So, you know, that like, it's just, actually my whole life that's been happening. My body does react in a way that's out of my control. And for some reason, my body never lies. Like, it's as if the body it doesn't have a filter. Like, okay, even if you have an issue where you have a habit that is negative, like you have a habit of slapping someone or something, or you have a bad abuse habit, right? It's still telling you the truth. It's doing that because it's telling you there's a problem. And when the problem is so bad that you end up, with an addiction, it's again your body saying, we have an issue. We have an issue. So you have to learn the language of your body. It's something that was discussed in 2 weeks actually about physical healing. So we'll go more into this because it's time to talk about the outer gifts next week. But it really is about how you address the physical world. That's kind of like what reality is about in the first place here. So I can definitely agree with that because my body does the same thing. My body knows. I know everything. It's weird. Like, I could be like, I love you. And then I'm like...
jittery, right?
And it's because and it's not necessarily because the body feels things. It's because my spirit feels things. And then it's transferring that energy to my physical body because I am consciously aware of these things. So there is a connection being drawn down. And then when I feel that, it's reacting. So... thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
That's true. Bodies do react. Rachel is the truth.
So so if you guys have any stories to share or any tips, just go ahead. We title along, to hear your opinion.
Yeah, because we're talking about how to tell the truth from a lie. Something we learned in past lives, though, something that our secret rule, okay, was always when we see past lives, it's real when it hurts. Mm-hmm. So when we teach people past lives and how to see past lives, they're like, is this real? Is that real? Usually it's when it really hurts that it's real. Like the pain is the key to healing usually because you have to address pain to heal. And the same with past life memories and the same with physical ailments. So if I cut my finger, that pain is a key to healing because it starts the healing process, it initiates it. So when you first talk to someone after a very traumatic event, and you're like, how could you hit her? How could you do this? And you're having a conversation. And you're trying to figure out who's the liar. It's usually the part that hurts that is drawn towards the truth. It's the pain that is the source to what healing needs to happen. So usually in very traumatic events or very painful memories, it's the pain that is going to lead you towards the truth. It is not the pleasure, it's not the ignorance, it's the pain. And sometimes your hardships will tell you more truth than anything. And that's why mistakes and hard times teach you so much. They expose the truth of life. So it's like there's so many pathways to truth. It's ridiculous. But we have the body pathway, we have the pain pathway, past life therapy pathway. There's so many pathways to truth. And but those are like some tips that I've learned over time. But it's just interesting. There's so many ways to find the truth. But I find that the truth is always there in the end. Like whenever you're like dating someone and you're like trying to wonder, are they being honest with you? The truth was right in front of you all along. You usually find out at the end the truth was there all along. So I'm just saying. That is true. So true. It's always there. So like this is why smart people, intelligent people, like all of you, intelligent, you can see the cracks in reality by understanding that the truth is always there. It's like the glitch in the matrix. You see it. It's there in front of you. And whenever you break up with someone or you end a connection with somebody, you always go back and you're like, how did I not see this? The signs were there, the red flags were there. It's because the truth is always screaming at you. It's your choice to see it. Why don't you see it? It's because we're so involved in the emotions. So let's talk about the curse. Intelligence and ignorance are like two sides of a coin. And, we live our entire life being taught by the world, as Rachel said, to be ignorant of everything. to be ignorant of the homeless, to be ignorant of the war, to be ignorant of everything, just to ignore it. You know, and for spiritual people, we can't ignore. It affects us. It depresses us. That's who we are. And you can't really embody true spiritual, you know, embodiment of intelligence and the mental consciousness if you don't accept that you're connected to everything, you know? And because the mind is also connected to emotions. So yeah, the curse of intelligence is very much ignorance. It's your choice to not be connected, to not pay attention. Because intelligence is you're, you know, fully aware. But ignorance, I've had my time being ignorant. I chose to be ignorant, but, you know, fortunately, I got to a point in my spiritual development that ignorance is not an option for me anymore. And it's kind of the bad part about being, you know, like getting a PhD or a doctorate or, you know, regressing past lives and becoming a master at it. Like, if you do something to a mastery, you can no longer go back. And specifically with my ability, I just can't. I'm an empath by nature, so I can't go back. I can't ignore things, unfortunately. And even when I ignore it, it still affects me, and I'm always aware of that. So it's tough. But just understanding in ignorance as a spiritual curse, well, ignorance can really drag you down, and if you ignore things, you don't know the truth. You know, don't ignore, you know, the senses and the signs. You know, like if all people turn on one person in your group, you know, and like your group of family members or your group of friends, you got to understand, is there signs? Let me pay attention. But if you don't feel it deep down, then it's not true. But if you feel it deep down, maybe there's some truth. Like, you just have to sort of piece it together. Look at the signs; they're all there. That's my advice. So yeah, what do you think about the curse of ignorance?
Well, ignorance is, I would just say, a pretty safe place to be. Being there, saying that. It is a comfort zone. It is an okay place to be because, you know, you just please everyone else. Let's be honest about that. Because when you're ignorant about your family, you just pretend that everything is okay. And so, you know, patterns just carry along. And then you pretend you're okay in your relationship. And so you're just ignoring all the red flags. And you just not. For some people, it is a good place to be.
Because ignorance is bliss.
It is. I mean, for some people it is. And you know, there's another thing. In the past, when I started my spiritual journey, it is something that also I shared in another podcast that's going to be coming up next month. I will just talk about that at the end of the video. And so we were talking about what exactly has happened in the beginning of the spiritual path when, you know, you find out about the truth and you just come out of your shell and you just, you know, exploring the world, and then you're like, oh my God, all these truths out there, now I understand. And then you try to drag everyone else with you. And you say, you know, oh my God, let me help my family get out of the ignorance, and then help my friends, help, you know, my colleagues. And then you become so passionate, waking everyone up, right? But the truth is that you just can't. Well, I tried that. I was so passionate in the beginning. I'm like, why do people don't want to see? Because some people don't want to see. And it is not your path to make people not being ignorant. There's a reason why they're in that state, and there's something for them to learn. And it is not your place to just pull them out. And during that time where you remove yourself from the situation, from that ignorant state, to, you know, to the state of spiritual intelligence, there is a grieving period.
Yeah.
And during that grieving period, you have to understand that you left something behind, which is ignorance, and whatever that means. Learn patterns and limiting beliefs and conditioning, all that stuff, along with the people and the situations. And you need to take the time before you just rush into new connections. You need to be smart about it. You need to understand that this place, you have to stay in there and you have to grieve. Not for a long time, because sometimes the grieving place becomes another comfortable space to be.
Yeah.
But you have to understand why you let this situation, those people go, and where exactly you're going. Because what happens is that if you try to replace those people, because I did that, I literally just attracted people who felt a lot like behavior-wise, like the people I left behind, even though they were supposed to be spiritual in the beginning of the path, in the middle of the path, but same behaviors. And so that pulled me back to an ignorant state. And I'm like, what is really happening? I started getting confused. So my truth was getting, literally messed up. I didn't know what was happening. And so you might find yourself from the ignorant state to intelligence being stuck somewhere in between because you don't take the time to understand what the space is.
That's true. So super true. So that is a very good way to think about ignorance itself. And our best tip is clearly just don't give in. It's easy, but you got to do what's right, not what's easy in life. So let's then talk about the final part of this live, which is about the advanced gifts, which is a lot. So we'll try to run through how understanding intelligence, how connecting with mental consciousness, how actually being able to tell the difference between truth and lies actually helps you develop spiritual gifts. So that is what we're going to talk about. So definitely it's about understanding that, intelligence leads towards spiritual gifts that deal with the mental mind, consciousness, the universal mind, all connecting. So as we mentioned before, channeling, channeling spirits and guides, channeling knowledge, automatic writing, automatic drawing. Art itself can be intelligence because you can channel intelligence through creativity, so you can mix gifts together. So there's these things that we do that actually lead towards the gifts. And you have a lot on that as well. So mediumship and channeling just, people from beyond, stuff like that. And also just being able to acquire knowledge and then apply it. So my tip actually is, in my experience, how to apply intelligence to then developing your spiritual skills is to take it and use it more often and then develop it into actually becoming smart. You have to become smart on how to actually do things. So, in my experience, I was channeling stuff in diaries and books and drawings and automatic drawing my whole life, right? But with that, it wasn't always easy, for me, because it was so much and I didn't know what to do. So what you do is to actually develop that skill is, you practice it, but you focus on actually developing skills, developing knowledge, and then gathering the knowledge. It's the same. Yeah, actually, it's the same as my my tips, actually, because it's the same. You want to gather the information, then look at the information, and then use the information. So specifically with automatic drawing and writing, that's what you want to do. You want to get the information out. Practice, practice, practice. Then you look at the piece of paper and what you did. And then you find out, how did I do that? What did I do? And how can I do that better? So this is that step process that we can actually utilize in developing the skills. It's the same as discerning the truth. So much information in life comes to you. People telling you so many things. Teachers reading you entire books of things you'll never remember. But what's important? You have to figure that out. You got to do that by actually focusing on what is important and then taking all the information, channeling it down, and finding out what's important. Like, you go to school and everyone just reads you the entire book, but what was the lesson of it? It's hard to know. But you yourself have to make a choice. And you have to see what is actually true, what is important, what is the lesson that needs to be learned. That is the part of channeling. That's what makes you intelligent, is channeling information, knowing what's important, and using that for self-discovery. So that's just specifically automatic drawing and writing, which is interesting. But yeah, you do light codes and, inspired work and healing art. Let's talk about tips on how to use your gift of channeling information to create things like this. How does it work?
Well, a big thing is that in the beginning I thought it was just channeling. And then to come and realize that it was something that I always did in my past lives. And this is where exactly your soul journey comes in. past lives, it is your soul journey across lifetimes. And everything that you have learned, you already just practice in this lifetime. And just it feels like, oh my God, it just came out of nowhere. But part of the spiritual intelligence is knowing your spiritual path across lifetimes. I mean, you cannot just regress everything, right? Me and they will be regressing like quite a lot of lifetimes, and we always find something new. But the thing is, what do you really do with that information? Is it just information, or is it just more than that? And so when you know who you are, because this is what this is all about, you just stop, I would just say, fully depending on your guides, on your angels, on your spiritual team, because you're not just a channeler, you are a co-creator, you are part of their team. And so a big thing that I say a lot to my soul clients, when they say, oh, who are my guides, who are I'm like, do you know them? They're like, oh, they just showed up to me and I just talked to them. I'm like, get to know them, ask questions. And this is where the spiritual intelligence comes in. Get to know them. Don't just, when they show up to you, don't just get information, just ask them questions, like as if you met someone in the physical realm. So let's say you're at the coffee shop and someone comes and sits with you, like, oh, let me give you some information about you, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just take the information and you don't ask. Let's be honest, you wouldn't do that, right? Like you wouldn't just allow just a random person to sit next to you and give you information. Like, oh yeah, I believe you.
Exactly.
So why would you do that in the spirit realm? When someone shows up and they claim that they are your spirit team, ask questions. Don't just allow them in your field. Because the more that you know, the more that you understand what is happening, what exactly you're channeling.
That's true. I think the problem is that in our world, religion and politics as well, like it's just indoctrinated us to look above and to see light, and to look down and see darkness. And that's just not the way the world works. There's no heaven and hell only. That's not quite as simple as it should be. So when you look up, like especially Christianity, it teaches you like, oh, the angels and the afterlife, and they come to you and blah, blah, blah. But only demons and dark entities can hold you back, and they're inside of you. Like, no, everything is above. Everything is above, and then it comes down to you. That is how we communicate with the spiritual world.
Yeah.
And intelligence is about communication. So, the demons and the angels come from above. They don't come from below. That's not the way this world works. And in past lives, it kind of works that way. This life, no, it does not. There's no demons coming out of the ground. There's none of that. There's nothing down there. It's all above right now. And so when you look into higher dimensions, you're trying to get to know your guides and all these entities, but you don't know who to trust because everyone has their own agenda, and you have to find out who's on your side. So, truth be told, when you start to channel, you need to check your sources. And that's why Past Lives helped us, because we used Past Lives to check our sources, see who the hell we were talking to. Because sometimes, people don't have your best interest at heart. When spirits come to you, they have a purpose. If the purpose is good or bad, kind of doesn't matter sometimes. It matters that they fulfill the purpose. You have to find out what the purpose is, and you have to judge the situation accordingly. That's the sad truth. And I think, we should spend future maybe weeks talking about spirit guides and stuff like that. So because, this season is about spiritual gifts. Last season is about, love and interpersonal and mental relationships. But, there's other things we could talk about, because I think that people need to know. They need to know the truth.
There's so much to talk about. Spirit guides and angels and spiritual teams, whatever you guys want to call it. Because, each person has their own, name for the guidance from other dimensions or from the spirit world. And we really want to, guys, help you to find a safe space to be able to express yourselves and actually get to know them, who they really are.
I agree. So specifically, mediumship, since I'm so used to it, that's exactly how it goes. You have to learn who to trust and how to trust, because it's not as easy as it seems. Definitely not. So the power of intelligence is truly known when you know how to communicate and you know who to trust, and spiritually and physically. And I want to talk about that actually, because as you develop these skills, you have to understand that the mental consciousness is a skill itself, and it's about communication, wanting to communicate and wanting not to communicate. So just like in your healthy or unhealthy relationships, if you don't communicate yourself or you don't communicate properly, you can get lied to all the time, to spirits and all kinds of things. So before we go, which is pretty soon, just feel free to ask any questions, any last questions. And after this, feel free to ask questions in the comments, and we'll come back to it like tonight or tomorrow, and then answer your questions about all these thoughts and all these ideas. We'd love to hear feedback from you guys. We'll give our final tips on actually now intelligence and how to understand how to develop that into spiritual gifts. And then we'll tell you what we're up to, and then we'll conclude. You can go first.
Yeah, so when it comes to spiritual intelligence, and when it comes to I would just say most people are very, very aware of the physical world, and when it comes, to, I guess, politics or, where the world is going in general, most people are intelligent about it. But the thing that most people follow is spiritual teachers. I want to talk about that. Just because someone is well known, it does not mean that they speak the truth.
Ooh, you said it.
And so kind of follow your intuition rather than following the crowd, because you wouldn't follow the crowd when it would come, to your physical life, when it would come, to politics or to social media. That's or true. To the news. You would always question what is out there. So use the same logic and the same intelligence to question the spiritual community as well, and make sure that it resonates with you and resonates with your own values.
That's true. There are people who are very famous who are very bad people, and we see them all in the news all the time. So in the spiritual community, it works the same way. There could be people with 1 million followers and you still can't trust them. It's the truth. You have to resonate with who you resonate with. You cannot just trust everyone just because you want to. Trusting blindly, I did that in the beginning. I learned my lesson. You have to trust with your heart. You got to trust with your mind, your soul. You have to be intelligent. You got to be able to discern if somebody's telling you the truth or not. And usually the truth is more simple than the lie. The lie is complex and elaborate. The truth is like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that's just logical, but logical reasoning really helps. It's just the truth. In the spiritual world, it helps. It's just the same. My final tip on how to develop your intelligence into advanced skills is to, like I said, practice it. Learn how to take in information. Learn how to analyze it, and learn how to use your intuition to pick the pieces out. And learn how to tell a lie when there's a lie. There's always a pattern. And the truth is always in front of you. You're just always afraid to see it. We're taught to be ignorant as children. Yep. You got to grow up and start looking at the world for what it is. That's my tip. And I also think just in general, just picking apart the lies and understanding how that's connected to the mental consciousness that you have. Think of it this way. Deep down, you know the truth always. Yeah. If you don't want to ignore it, ignore it. But you don't have to, because the truth is always in front of you. I find that to be true in my entire life. I look back and the truth was always there. We can choose to ignore. You can choose to ignore. You can be taught to ignore. But at the end of the day, your body is not ignoring. Yep. Your soul is not ignoring. So if you want to ignore, it causes you pain. It causes you pain, so don't do it. So that's concludes our talk on actually being able to discern the truth. Again, if you guys have any questions after this, feel free. We'll answer any questions you have along the way. And next week, we're going to be talking about outer gifts. And outer gifts are more of how these spiritual aspects of who you are affect your real life. And it's going to be very interesting in the series that we're creating. We're going to talk about power in the spiritual consciousness. It's going to be awesome.
Excited about that one.
Yeah, so definitely look forward to what we're doing, and we'll let you know.
Definitely.
What's going on. So yeah, it was so good to speak with you guys. We look forward to all the comments and discussing things with you. Feel free to suggest anything along the way, and we will definitely be able to hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you guys have a beautiful Friday and beautiful Saturday to the rest of the world. And so looking forward to next week, actually.
Yeah. Next week is about a topic that I really want to talk about because I think it's, again, something underestimated. Way underestimated. Power. What is the spiritual power? Yeah. We're going to find out. So have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe out there. Don't keep your hopes high. The world will come to balance at some point. All right, speak soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.